Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of F1 Life. Thanks to everyone that watched the first episode. This week's episode is all about the epic race at Silverstone. The first corner of the race saw a massive crash between several drivers, most notably the dramatic crash of Zhou Guanyu. Pierre Gasly went for a gap between George Russell's Mercedes and the Alfa Romeo, which caused the wheel of George's car to clip Zhou's. This resulted in the Alfa Romeo being flipped upside down and travelling all the way down the straight upside down. As it travelled on the straight and into the gravel trap, it dug in and flipped over. It then proceeded to jump over the tyre wall and was caught by the catch fencing. Whilst the halo did its job in protecting the driver and reportedly Zhou didn't lose consciousness, the car was left in a very tight space in between the tyre wall and the catch fencing, effectively trapping Zhou inside the car and leaving the medical team with a very confined space to work within. It was great to see George jumping out of the car and running over to see if he could help his fellow driver. F1 has received a bit of criticism for the tight space the car was left in. However, it seems like a pretty unique situation with the car never expected to end up where it did. Thankfully, Zhou wasn't injured and was seen walking around the paddock. The Zhou accident also triggered a secondary crash, with Valtteri Bottas slowing after seeing his teammate's accident. Alex Albon reacted and got out of the power. Sebastian Vettel was behind and couldn't react quick enough, causing him to plough into the back of Alex Albon's Williams. Alex was then shunted headfirst into the concrete barriers on the pit straight. He was transferred to the medical centre and then by helicopter to Coventry Hospital. Thankfully, he also sustained no major injuries during the incident. During the first lap chaos, there was also another incident that could have easily been missed. A group of protesters from Stop Oil managed to get onto the track and were pictured sitting on the Wellington Straight. The red flag that was thrown inadvertently prevented the protest from risking the lives of drivers and marshals. A few of the damaged cars drove past the protesters, but thankfully, because of the damage they had sustained, they were driving at slow speeds. Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel have both shown support and sympathy with the protesters. Seb noted that whilst the course was a good one, there are better ways to protest than this. Lewis didn't seem to take this into account. However, a later statement from Mercedes claimed that Lewis agreed with the cause, but like Seb, not the method. During the race, Lewis showed an impressive form of pace, first dispatching the McLaren of Lando Norris and then moving on to the Ferraris. He was able to close down a large time deficit on a set of medium tyres, even pumping in fastest laps of the race. He then pitted and a slow pit stop put him back out on a set of hard tyres behind both of the Ferraris. The hard tyres did take some time to warm up, but once they did, he was then able to start closing down the gap again. Esteban Ocon in the Alpine then had an engine failure which caused the safety car to be deployed. This allowed Lewis to pit and put on a set of soft tyres. After the safety car restart, Lewis immediately lost a place to Red Bull's Sergio Perez, who had also pitted for the soft tyres. Perez then battled away with Leclerc in the Ferrari, and whilst the two tripped over each other, what came next was possibly one of the best overtakes of the season. Perez was forced wide by Leclerc, and the opening up of a gap allowed Lewis to overtake both of them in the final corner. Perez, however, was soon back past Lewis in the next few corners. However, Charles Leclerc wasn't able to get back past Lewis as he hadn't pitted during the safety car and was on a set of old tyres. Whilst Mercedes' pace has definitely improved, Red Bull seemed to still have the edge on Mercedes, with Perez getting past Lewis pretty quickly and also being able to pull out a gap. They seem to have solved the inherent problems with the car. However, Silverstone is a very smooth track, so we're yet to see if this performance will last at other tracks. Max Verstappen was on for another great result at Silverstone, having overtaken Carlos Sainz not once but twice. He then suffered what was first thought to be a puncture. However, after pitting for a set of new tyres, the problem was still there, the team confirming with Max over the radio that it was damaged to the floor after running over debris. Max lost a huge amount of pace and even declared the car 100% broken at one point. However, after an exchange with the team on the radio, it was deemed that the damage wasn't structural and Max was safe to continue. However, he would have to live with the reduced performance. Charles took some damage to his front wing on the first lap after bumping past Sergio Perez, an incident he was lucky not to receive a penalty for. The resulting impact on Perez's car meant he had to pit and came out towards the back of the pack. Charles Leclerc, though, was able to carry on and even put pressure on his teammate up in front. The team eventually allowed them to swap places, with Charles clearly having the superior pace. Quite impressive considering he must have been losing performance with the contact. Before the safety car, Charles had the race all but won, which would have been mighty impressive. However, the team chose not to pit Charles for fresh tyres, leaving him out on old tyres, and his teammate who had pitted for the softs was quickly past him. After the race, team boss Matteo Binotto was pictured giving Charles what looked like a telling off, presumably telling him not to blame the team for the end result. After 150 Grand Prix starts, Carlos Sainz has won his first race with Ferrari after an impressive pole lap on the Saturday. During the race, Carlos had to get his elbows out to overtake his teammate for the lead of the race, and all credit to both drivers as this was done without contact and it made a great spectacle for the fans. Charles has clearly had the edge over Carlos all season, and it's a well-needed victory for Carlos to cement his place within the team. Nigel Mansell was at the race and was clearly rooting for Ferrari and for Carlos, stating that he needed the victory. The victory must have been a special one for Carlos, especially with it being in red for Ferrari. Mick Schumacher also scored his first points in F1, fighting with Max Verstappen on the last few laps of the race. Under the guidance of the great Seb Vettel, Mick has had a fantastic start to his F1 career, coming so close to points on many occasions. This weekend though saw him do it in style. Having to be very careful when fighting Max, he could ill afford to get caught up and tangled with the car. This is hopefully the first of many points and race wins to come. Mick's sister and his mother were there at the Grand Prix and celebrated his first points with him. Thanks again for listening to this episode of F1 Life. Please leave a like, comment and subscribe.